for our purification. Here is a very short introduction. So today we have dear devotee friends. I'm sure you are all excited and thrilled to have somebody like Srutakirti Prabhu. When we read chapters of Srila Prabhupada Leelamrut, this is like a legendary personality coming out of Leelamrut and sitting in front of us. So we are all thrilled and excited, Prabhuji. And Prabhuji, for your information, this is this community. So last year, Srila Prabhupada's 125th centenary year, we had begun with a group almost 800 plus devotees. They read through Srila Prabhupada Leelamrut systematically. And this year, we thought of inviting all the illustrious disciples of Srila Prabhupada every week. So this is the 6th session, and previous 5 sessions we've had many wonderful illustrious disciples of Srila Prabhupada gracing and giving us the all nectar flow. So in this series, now we would like to continue. Today is session number 6. And my dear devotee friends, Prabhujis and respected Matajis, you'll be very happy and excited to know that we have someone who had, the most personal association of Srila Prabhupada, especially, today is 17th of July. So almost 52 years before, on 22nd of July, 1971, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada at Brooklyn, New York, gave the first initiation to Srutakirti Prabhu. And since then, it's been a great journey, especially a personality who has spent 24/7 time with Srila Prabhupada as his personal servant for almost 2.5 years. And we were told that, during that period, Srila Prabhupada actually circumambulated the entire universe for 5 times. So His Grace Srutakirti Prabhu has been there every moment. And cherry on the top, he recorded every moment of those, and his wonderful books, what is the difficulty, Srila Prabhupada Uvach, those refined moments, between the lines we read when we read Leelamrut, all those between the lines have been wonderfully captured by His Grace Srutakirti Prabhu. And because of his grace, generations after generation, now we are in probably 3rd or 4th generation, we still can experience presence of Srila Prabhupada every moment, because these illustrious disciples like Srutakirti Prabhu have been graceful enough to capture those wonderful memories and share their realizations in wonderful, in their Vani and through their books. So today we have this great opportunity to interact with His Grace Srutakirti Prabhu. And we are so happy and delighted, excited, thrilled to hear from you, Prabhuji. And without wasting any further moment, we would like to hand over to you and be available to get completely drenched in His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada's mercy. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the introduction. Oma Gyanathamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshu and Militam Dena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpatrubhishchakri Pasandubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So of course I'd like to thank you all for arranging this for today. I can see, as you said, after going through the Lamrita, you've arranged different Prabhupada disciples have been giving their talks over the last 6 weeks, and I'm sure every one of you have benefited very much. See, Prabhupada, sometimes we describe Prabhupada as like a very wonderful jewel, like a diamond with so many facets. And his disciples sometimes were like one or two of those facets. No one can be like Srila Prabhupada, but his disciples, I can see they've all absorbed certain qualities from Srila Prabhupada. So we're all like little facets. And the presence of Prabhupada disciples is I think, very, very important. And as you all well know, over the next decade or two, they'll all be gone. So as much as possible, I think it's very wonderful what you're doing, and I'm honored and humbled to be able to be part of it. I've been thinking, what topic, to perhaps pick a specific topic. I know other devotees, Hari, sorry, he's very good at that. He has everything categorized, the different topics about Srila Prabhupada. And since I had so much time to do this, I've been thinking what to do. And just this morning, I was thinking one topic that everyone can relate to, I would think, is prasadam. Srila Prabhupada and prasadam. And as you mentioned, I was with him for some times, traveled around the world with him 4 or 5 times. And from the very beginning, Prabhupada, he would give me different things, sometimes even show me how to make different preparations. Sometimes he would just expect me to know how to do certain things, and he would ask for it. One of the very first things, as you said, is it's actually almost 50 years. It'll be 50 years ago, the beginning of Kartik. Well, just after Janmashtami, that I became his servant. So for me, of course, it's very special that to reach these hallmarks. So 50 years, it'll be in August, just another month, that I started out in New Vrindavan. New Vrindavan was a very special place to me, and from New Vrindavan, Prabhupada brought me right to Vrindavan. But on the way, from when we left New Vrindavan, which was somewhere, I think, around the middle of August of 1972. So one of the things, of course, that we would make in New Vrindavan for Prabhupada was sandesh. Sandesh was one of Prabhupada's favorite sweets. Of course, he liked Bengali sweets in particular. Once along, this was months later, we were in New Dwarka. New Dwarka at that time was considered the world headquarters for Krishna consciousness. That was the temple where even Prabhupada would arrange for different devotees to go there to learn deity worship, to learn cooking. He considered it example of what he was trying to set up. Of course, later on, that temple became Vrindavan, 1975, where Prabhupada very carefully showed them preparations to make for the deities, how many plates to put on the altar for the deities, how long to leave those plates on the altar. So he gave very specific instructions. But in the beginning, it was where I met Prabhupada, it was New Vrindavan. And New Vrindavan, of course, was a farm. Cows were there. Before Prabhupada came, I was taking care of the cows. Sometimes on that farm, we had 5, 6 milking cows, we would say. And I was milking those cows twice a day for a period of time. So when Prabhupada came there, we knew one thing Prabhupada had, and this was all year long. He always had hot milk at night. And hot milk at night, I learned from Prabhupada, it meant very, very hot milk. I learned it from Kirtanananda. Kirtanananda, he was known even in the early days as Kitchenananda. Kirtanananda was one of the first people Prabhupada taught how to cook nice Vedic preparations, simple things, rice, chapatis, dal, and how to make ghee. Back in those days, everywhere, every temple, all frying was done in ghee. All chances were made in ghee. There was no question of oil. I'm going back and forth with timings here, just as things pop up, but it was even in Calcutta. Calcutta, of course, West Bengal, Bengalis, Bengal cooking. We know Prabhupada was raised with his mother cooking for him. Naturally, he liked shukta. We know he was called Kachori Mukhi. He was known, as you've read in the Ilamrita, very early on, he would put kachoris in had a vest. So all his pockets in his vest, he would one kachori. So Prabhupada was very fond of kachoris. And in Calcutta, while I was Prabhupada's servant, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he was the secretary. So we always heard from Prabhupada what to do. And one of the things Prabhupada told us, of course, was ghee was for the inside of the body. Oil was for the outside of the body. I very quickly had to learn how to massage Srila Prabhupada. And in the course of massage, sandalwood oil was rubbed on his head, Mysore sandalwood oil, very pure, wonderful oil, most fragrant oil. And Prabhupada smell like sandalwood oil. It was wonderful fragrance. So Prabhupada taught us this. He himself, he would use sandalwood oil on the head. He would use mustard oil on the rest of his body. And he did this every day before lunch. This was the routine. I would give him massage. So one time, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he walked into the room and he said, Prabhupada, you say ghee is for the inside of the body and oil is for the outside of the body. And Prabhupada, yes, that's correct. He said, well, here in Calcutta, he said they cook in mustard oil. He said, why if ghee is for the inside, oil's for the outside? He said, but they cook in mustard oil. Prabhupada said, oh, it's very tasty. And while Prabhupada was there in Calcutta, his sister, his younger sister was there. Prabhupada's younger sister and him, they were, of all his family members, they were very, very close. She loved Prabhupada naturally as her older brother. And she also loved Prabhupada as Jagakuru. She saw him as the person who was giving Krishna consciousness all over the world. But when I got to Calcutta with Prabhupada in 1973, of course, at that time I got to meet Pishima. We called her Pishima Auntie. Her name was Baba Tarini. She was also initiated disciple. So when Prabhupada was there, she also liked to cook for Srila Prabhupada. And of course, she cooked very wonderful. Prabhupada said, my sister, she was excellent cook, expert cook. He told me once, he said, my sister, he said, my mother, expert cook. He said, and my sister, she's also expert cook. She learned from our mother. And then he said, I'm also expert cook. He said, but I learned just by watching. It was one of the things Prabhupada would say sometimes. He learned by watching. He learned different things just by watching. And it was kind of, he said it with pride that, of course, this requires someone very intelligent, very expert, just by seeing how to do things, not even being given instructions, but just by watching, you could learn. So he said that about his own cooking. He learned by watching. So we also, when Prabhupada in Calcutta, I was his cook. One of my main services. I had, of course, many services, all very personal services, answering the bell, preparing his bath, preparing even his chandan, tilak to put on. But my main services were massage and cooking, preparing his lunch. And amazingly, both those things went on at the same time. When I became his servant, one of the first thing he taught me was how to use the cooker. Now, all of you should know Prabhupada's cooker. You should have seen pictures of Prabhupada's cooker. There's many photographs. Sometimes with Upendra, you'll see Upendra on the side and this 3-level cooker. You'll see also Prabhupada using the cooker in the stove. That was in Louisiana. So you'll see these photos. The cooker was famous. The cooker was made of brass and inside was tinned. And this tinning you would have to do every year. You would re-tin it. So whenever we went to India, Prabhupada would get the cooker re-tinned, because cooking directly into the brass is not a good idea, especially tomatoes, things like that, things that are, I can't think of the word. Anyway, so the cooker was tinned. So when I became Prabhupada's servant, the first day, Kirtanananda introduced me to him and said, he's a very good cook, but he doesn't know how to massage. And Prabhupada said, anyone can massage. So those first 3 days as his servant, we did two things. In the kitchen, we were in Dallas. That same temple is there, Dallas Gurukula, the temple on, get the name of the street, Radhakala Chanji deities, which Prabhupada installed are there. So Prabhupada took massage in the kitchen. Now, massage meant lying on the floor, straw mat. Prabhupada's wearing a gamcha, his servant's wearing a gamcha. But before we started the massage, which I also had to learn how to massage Srila Prabhupada, but he wanted me to learn how to use the cooker, because the whole meal could be cooked. And Prabhupada also was very proud of that. Not that it took hours and hours to prepare his preparations, but 1 hour, Prabhupada would say 45 minutes, whole lunch is prepared. So this is something I had to learn from Prabhupada. So I brought the mat into the kitchen. It was a good size Western style kitchen, counters, stand up. You would use counters like that. So I put the mat down, we had our gumshoes on, and this cooker is there, this 3-tiered cooker, which of course I had never seen before. So Prabhupada showed me with the cooker, we put in the bottom dal, and the dal mainly I used when I cooked was split mung dal. And in the cooker, this was very good dal. So in the bottom, you would put water and the dal beans in the bottom. And you would add your salt and turmeric just then. And this is how he showed me. So I'm explaining it that way. Now on there was a next level. So that was also, the bottom level's this big, of course, it's rounded on the bottom to sit on the stove. Now the next one fits in there. And in the bottom, there's holes all around, because what's going to happen is the cooking action of the dal is going to steam whatever's above. So on the next level, he had me we cut up vegetables. Now for those first couple of days, he's cutting the vegetables and putting them in there, whatever vegetables were available, cauliflower, potatoes. Anyway, so many things, different things we would put in the second level. Now you put the next level on. This is the top level. Now, that of course also has holes along it on the bottom. It fits in there. And then there was a container, like a tiffin piece, but it was large. And in that tiffin, we put rice and no water, and just 2 parts water. And then of course the lid. Now the lid was also it served dual purposes. It was the lid, but also when you turned it upside down, it was a small wok. And in that wok, you would make your chances. And even if necessary, if no other cookware was there, you could even make your subjis in that wok. So now you have the dal on the bottom, you're going to steam vegetables in the middle, and you're going to steam the rice on the top. And that had a lid on it, where you could even fit a few more cut vegetables in under the lid. So the first day we're setting that up. So Prabhupada's on one side of the counter and he's cutting the vegetables. Prabhupada didn't waste time, nor did he expected you to always be doing something, not that you're just watching. You had to be doing some service other than that. So as he's cutting the vegetables, anyone can cut vegetables, you don't need to be trained for it. So he said, you wash the rice. So now I have this container. I go over to the sink, which is just not even 2 meters away, just 4 or 5 feet away. And I put water in the thing with the rice, and I'm swishing it around to clean the rice, and I pour the water off. Then I put water in again and swish it around, and I start pouring it off. I learned from Kirtanananda, wash the rice 3 times. You boil the milk, add a foam 3 times, off and on 3 times. We always had these practices we learned. So while the rice is in there, see, the electricity went off, but fortunately we're still live, I believe. So I have the rice, second time water's in there, and I start pouring it off. Prabhupada's over on the other side of the kitchen. Immediately he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm washing the rice 3 times, Prabhupada." He said, "Once is enough." So this of course was news to me. It was new to me, but it was Prabhupada in some way showing me he liked bodily maintenance was minimum. That's all. He bragged. He was proud. 45 minutes, my whole lunch in Vrindavan, 1975, behind his desk, Krishna Balaram Mandir. And the devotees, his disciples, are in front of him. But there's also many guests. And they're Brijbasi people, local people in Vrindavan. And Prabhupada, he would brag to them. He would say different things. He said to them, "This devotee here, he left his family. His parents, they're millionaires." He said he would not even leave his family for $1 million. They offered him $1 million. He would say, "Isn't that true?" And devoted, "Yes, Prabhupada, that's true." He said to me, "Srutakirti, you would not leave for $1 million." "No, Prabhupada." So he liked to show the people what he had created, how he had created Vaishnavas all around the world with his Western disciples. And then he said to me, and he said, "My whole lunch," he says, "Srutakirti, he prepares my whole lunch, 45 minutes. Isn't that right, Srutakirti?" "Yes, Prabhupada." I said, "In lunch and your massage," I said, "in the lunches, while the lunch is being cooked, you're getting your massage then?" He said, "Yes, lunch and massage, 45 minutes, finished." Not that we spend so much time for bodily maintenance. So this kind of was like that in this very first time. He's saying once was enough. Just everything quick. When it came to taking care of ourselves, we don't spend a lot of time. And so Prabhupada set the example himself. He felt like that. Not that he wanted to spend a lot of time taking care of himself. Of course, he also said on several occasions that 3 things kept him alive. He said his morning walk, his massage, and his Ayurvedic medicine. He took one Ayurvedic medicine, which he took regularly, and that was a Yogendra Ras, and it came from one pharmacy. Prabhupada was the only pharmacy he trusted. It was called Sadhana Asadalaya. They still exist. You can find them on Google. You can Google them, and you'll also find Yogendra Ras. Very expensive. At that time, it was relatively expensive because supposedly it has in it gold dust, and pearl dust in it. And it was very good tonic. Anyway, Prabhupada took that every other day before his morning walk. So he said these were the things that kept him alive. And of course, his morning walk, he was preaching. It was conversations. So many morning walk conversations are there, or chanting japa. He expected us, his disciples that traveled with him, his entourage. We would, if nothing else, we could get our rounds done on the morning walk. And Prabhupada himself chanted his rounds on the morning walk. So it wasn't that he was just relaxing. Again, Prabhupada was always doing something. During his massage before lunch, the secretary would come in and read the mail. Prabhupada would dictate answers. So it wasn't enough that he was just getting massage, which he credited for help keeping him alive with us, but he was also doing various services during these different things. So 3 days we did that. Prabhupada wanted me to learn how to use the cooker, and by Prabhupada's mercy and Krishna's grace, I was very good at using the cooker. I, as you said, 2.5 years with Srila Prabhupada, and of that, the majority of it, almost 2 years, was outside of India. Inside of India, I didn't have to cook for Prabhupada very often. There were Matajis, his disciples, Malati, Palika, Shruti Rupa. There was a half a dozen of them. When you went to India, they would cook for Prabhupada. But outside of India, I was cooking for Prabhupada. So I used that cooker 500, 600, 700 times. Prabhupada never criticized anything I made, which in itself was wonderful. Chapatis, of course, always had to puff up, or else you couldn't bring it to him. So miraculously, by Krishna's mercy, with Srimati Radharani's mercy, they were always puffing up. I was bringing to Prabhupada. But he spent that time for those 3 days showing me how to cook. Because, as he also said, two things he said: you dress for others, he said, and you cook for yourself. In other words, you should eat what's good for you, what you like. And one of the first principles, Prabhupada spoke Ayurvedic principles, I wouldn't say very often, but often. He didn't speak about it in classes as such. He was always giving us the absolute truth. But in his personal life, he followed Ayurvedic principles very much. And one of those was, you cook for yourself. He said, if you cook for yourself, you'll never get sick. It's one of the principles. And he said, and one of the reasons, he said, if you cook for yourself, no matter what kind of garbage it is, you'll like it because you made it. So these are different things. And in Ayurveda, it's a fact that first principle is you have to like what you're eating. Otherwise, you can't digest. So in this way, he taught me very quickly how he wanted to be served, prasadam, how that seva, prasadam seva, Prabhupada would say. One of the first things he told me was, don't put too much on my plate. He said, if I want something more, I'll ask. He said, but if you put so much on there, he said, I'll lose my appetite. So that's another principle, Ayurvedic principle. If you see too much in front of you, you'll lose your appetite. If you see something in front of you you don't like, you'll lose your appetite. He said, and when it's time, of course, regulation, and I hear this all the time from Ayurvedic physicians, when I rarely go to see them, is I should eat very regulated. Otherwise, I'll have trouble digesting. That's also Ayurvedic principle. So Prabhupada, that meant he took massage. After massage, he took bath. Of course, all this I prepare the bath water for him, lay his clothes out on the bed that he's going to put on after his bath. Everything is there. His kopin is there, fresh dhoti, fresh kurta is there. Then he would dress. Then he would go sit down on his asana behind his desk. And he had a tilak. He had a little regiment. He had silver cup, katuri, pretty silver katuri. There would be a ball of chandan, like the size of a golf ball. They would just keep using it in that way. Next to that, there was a little lota, also about the size of a golf ball. And that small lota had the water in it and the little silver spoon. So when he would sit down behind the desk, he would take the spoon, put however many drops of water, and very regulated, same amount of drops every day. Then he would put the tilak, the chandan, and he'd apply his tilak. Then he would say Gayatri mantra, his noon Gayatri mantra. When he's finished saying Gayatri mantra, you should be bringing the plate of prasadam, because that's the other principle, Ayurvedic principle. When digestion, already the stomach, when it's time, the proper time is there, already your juices begin flowing, and prasadam must be there. So this is what it was like to be with Prabhupada. Everything went on like clockwork with Srila Prabhupada. Now, in order to do that, think during massage, and as he showed me those first 3 days, we set up the cooker. And the key to using the cooker, because there were some devotees that could never figure out how to use the cooker properly. They would burn things, would dry out, undercook things, overcook things. The massage is an hour and a half. About. There's no structure for massage. Each part of his body, you massaged it till then you went to the next part, which from the head, then you went to the back, the main part of the massage, the back. So here you might be here 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. Then you go. Then you do the back. That could be another 20 minutes, or it could be longer. So each part of his body, you would do it. Then you went, sat on the side, you did his arms, his chest, belly. Then you did the legs, and finally the feet. So I say that also, you couldn't use your imagination in massaging Prabhupada. He told you what to do and when to move to the next spot. And the reason I'm saying that is because I experienced it. I was with him for a year. And after a year of massaging him, I thought, I can do this. I don't need his permission, or I don't need him to signal me when to go to the next spot. So I massaged his head. And then I went after some time and started massaging his back. And then I went to the side. So I did this for 3 days. He never said a word for 3 days, except for the third day. And the third day, I'm massaging his head with the sandalwood oil. And I took my hands off his head to start massaging his back. And he said, you massage me until I tell you to stop, not until you tell you to stop. So this, again, was what it was like to be with Srila Prabhupada. Everything was according to his desire. Your desire had to be his desire. Just like we say it, devotee, right? Pure devotee. He has no desire, only Krishna's desire. His only desire is fulfilling Krishna's desire. So being personally with your spiritual master, you get to experience what that's like. You actually have to become free from your idea. Your idea means your desires of what to do. You only do what he's telling you to do. Imagine pure devotee. He's only doing what Krishna is having him do. This was Prabhupada. And he wanted to transfer that to his disciples, to only do what he wanted us to do. This is actually a very important point. Sometimes it gets brought up to me. We see with Prabhupada, in our society, so many things go on. Kirtans in this way, classes in this way. Everything's going on in different ways. Prabhupada had formulas. Kirtan, he said, temple kirtan, no harmonium, simply mridanga and kartal. And yet we'll see harmoniums are there. We'll see dancing, all kinds of wild dancing might be there. So many things, and they'll think, well, Prabhupada okayed it. So one of the things to understand is Prabhupada allowed us to do things. He had that principle, 1, 2, 3. Sometimes at kirtans, he would stop the kirtan. Here in India, we have this experience. As soon as I came to India first time, you have speakers, and to this day it goes on. So loud, person leading kirtan, the speakers are so loud because it seems like almost you want to get your money's worth out of the speaker system. As loud as you can make it, that's how loud it will be. And the devotee leading the kirtan, he can be very happy hearing his voice, but so loud. When Prabhupada would hear these loud kirtans, he would say Rakshasa. Sounds like Rakshasa, but still they go on. So just because things go on doesn't mean it met with Prabhupada's approval. It means ultimately he didn't prohibit. Because if he does, that's an offense. So he could say something once. He could say it again, not so loud. He could say, oh, dancing should be. We all know how Prabhupada danced. We know how he said we should dance. And yet so many things will go on because, well, Prabhupada approved. No, Prabhupada permitted. So in our Krishna consciousness, we got to really try to understand what Prabhupada approved of, not what he permitted. Once one young disciple of Prabhupada, she was 20 years old. She was married at 18 years old. A husband, had a daughter that was now 2 years old, and under some unfortunate circumstances, her husband died. Now she's 20 years old with this baby girl. And this is in Los Angeles. She had a brother, also devotee, her older brother. They both joined 1967, 1968. So after the death of her husband, she was, of course, freaked out how to survive. Young woman, she's living in the temple. So they asked to see Srila Prabhupada, the two of them. He was going to speak. So I arranged, and I was in the room with Prabhupada. So her brother explained what happened. She was married, husband's now dead, she has a little daughter, and she's thinking, is it okay to get married, or would you prohibit it? Prabhupada looked. He said, no, I'll not prohibit. He said, but, and her brother said, she feels she needs protection. And Prabhupada looked at him. He said, you're not protected? Then he looked at me. He said, Srutakirti, you're not protected? He looked at her. He said, you're not protected? He said, Krishna's protecting. Prabhupada wanted us to come to that level of understanding that we're all protected by Krishna. Every moment, to have that complete faith. If we just perform our devotional services, we engage in devotional service 24 hours a day, we're protected by Krishna. That's the fact. But as what he saw is these doubts, he said, you're not protected? And then he said, problem is, he said, in the West, he said, men are not trained up in how to take care properly. And he said, and women are not trained up in chastity. He said, but I'll not prohibit. And this was the gist of this conversation. So Prabhupada allowed us to do so many things. He never rejected us. One thing after another, we could fall down, intoxication, illicit sex, whatever it was. We come back, he always took us back. That's what he said, you're ever well-wisher. Every letter he signed, you're ever well-wisher. Always took us back. But he expected us to rise to the level of pure devotion. He wanted that with us. He wanted us to come to that standard. He wanted his leaders, he would say so often, do as I'm doing. To deal with how you dealt with everyone. Deal with as I'm doing. So he set the example. So in our practice of Krishna consciousness, as we're practicing, we should want more and more to understand, not imitate. Prabhupada slept 2 hours at night. We're not imitating, but that desire to always be engaged in service should be there. So like that. So that was, again, just a little sample of the very first thing he showed me. Don't spend so much time. Minimum. We say that devotee, he takes basic necessities, bare minimum. It's how we were raised in Krishna consciousness. Not that we're looking for opulent lifestyle in the temple. Back in the 70s, there was no such thing. Now, even here in Vrindavan, so much opulence is there. Every room has an air conditioner. And I can't say it's not necessary. We had a very, very, very hot summer, 3 months, still going on, 4 months, 45 degrees, 3 months in a row. But the austerity has so much been minimized. We have to seek the austerity now. Everyone has their room. Everyone has a nice bed to sleep in. Everyone has their nice little cell phone. None of these things we had when we started out in Krishna consciousness. And that's why we made nice progress just wanting to serve Srila Prabhupada. So I know I got off the track a little about prasadam. So that prasadam, the trick was you turn the flame on the cooker, and that's where the expertise came in. You had to put that flame on such a level that if the massage was 1 hour or 1.5 hours, 1 hour, 45 minutes, when you came back to it after completing the massage, the rice would be done, the dal would be cooked, but it wouldn't be burnt, wouldn't dry out, wouldn't be undercooked, wouldn't be overcooked. And imagine these vegetables sitting in this steaming device for 1.5 hours. So somehow or other, things worked out. So then while Prabhupada was taking his bath, getting dressed, putting on tilak, saying his Gayatri mantra, you've got to take everything from this cooker and turn it into preparations. So the first thing you do is you would take the lid off. This is what Prabhupada showed me. You put the lid on the burner, you put the ghee in there. Not oil, ghee. Put the ghee in there. And chances, he showed me what was available at that time. It was cumin, coriander, asafoetida, of course, salt, turmeric. And if you had bitter melon, first thing you would do is you would cut it like little coins, like a 5 rupee coin. You cut it up and you would fry that in ghee and some turmeric in there. And you would make it nice and crispy. Because also that increases the appetite. I had a bitter preparation, the bitter melon. It makes for good appetite. It makes for good digestion. So that would be, if available, that would be the first thing Prabhupada took. So then after you do that, you make another chance. You make rather big chants because you pour some of the chants into the dal. And then you can grab some of those vegetables that are in that middle tier and you put them in and you fry them up a bit. You brown them up. Prabhupada liked his sabjis a little bit toasty on the outside. So you brown them up. So now you have your rice, you have your dal. You could have 3-4 different sabji preparations. And then the chapati dough, you made that before the massage. That's covered. So now you get your chapati dough. It's sat for 1 hour or 2, so it's nice, pliable. And you make your chapatis. And then you complete your plate. And there's always a sweet on the plate. You can have salt and lemon on the plate like that. And then you make 1 chapati. That's on the plate. It's puffed up. And you bring the plate in. And when you bring that plate in, Prabhupada hopefully just completed Gayatri mantra. And he's ready for prasadam. So this is principle for Ayurveda, how to do things. As soon as it's time to eat, prasadam should be there. Prabhupada sat down just on the floor on a straw mat. He had the little table, choki, on the floor, just about that high. And he faced the wall. He didn't face out towards the room, he faced the wall. Was honoring prasadam. Like Prabhupada said, this prasadam seva. Not just you're eating, you're doing service. Everything we do should be service, seva to Krishna. Putting on his tilak, when you watch Prabhupada put his tilak on, you could understand with service. So that was the general lunch. Now, when I was with Prabhupada, again, and every night he had hot milk. Not hot milk 1, 2, 3 times foam. So it was very hot. And I generally put a little sugar in, always had sweetener. I never put turmeric in it, never put these other things. He never asked, and I never did it. But it was always sweetened. Sometimes he would say use honey on a few different occasions. But generally, I would just put a spoonful of sugar in the milk. So that has to be on a plate. The cup is very, very hot, and you have the spoon. Now, previous servants he had in cooks, they all told me the same thing. Nanda Kumar, Govinda Dasi, this was 71, 1970, 69. Prabhupada always had his hot milk. Sometimes that's all. And sometimes he would ask for mudi, puffed rice. Puffed rice also you made chants, asafoetida, turmeric like that, and peanuts. And that was one of his favorite preparations. His mother would make one. From when he was a child, he liked mudi, puffed rice. So sometimes he would ask for puffed rice in the evening. He said it was innocent. In other words, anyone can digest. Even you have bad digestion, you can digest puffed rice. He called it innocent. Now, when I became his servant, that was August 1972. That wasn't my experience. From the very first day I became his servant, he would ask for things in the evening. In the evening means around 8:30 p.m. One of the first things he asked for in the evening was puris and chips. He said, make puris and chips. This was in San Francisco. So now I had been with him about a week. And of course, I'm from USA, Philadelphia, big city on the East Coast, just south of New York City. So I had never been asked for chips before. And of course, I misunderstood. But anyway, I made the puris, and puris meant maida. It was white flour. There was no atta in the puri dough. And the puri dough, as I was trained to make it from Kirtanananda, was you had the maida, and you would some ghee. You would mix some ghee into the maida, and then you would add your water and a little salt. So that was the puri dough. So now we have the wok full of ghee. So I have to figure out how to make chips. But again, I misunderstood because in USA, chips are crisps. In other parts of the world, we call them potato chips, bag of potato chips. Other places they call crisps. So he said chips, but I'm thinking crisps, and I'm trying to cut this potato. I don't have any special instrument. I just have a knife, and I'm trying to slice the potato very, very thin to make potato chips. So I fry up a bunch of chips, sprinkle some salt over them. Then I make a puri, put it on the plate, and I bring it into Prabhupada. Put it before him, I offer obeisances, and I sit up, and he looks at me. He said, what is this? I said, it's puri and chips. He looks, he said, these aren't chips. It took me decades before I realized what chips were. We called them French fries. He wanted fries, French fries. But I didn't make that. Anyway, that was one of my very first disappointments with Prabhupada, that I did something wrong. He gave me a look, just confused look, like, what have I done? Anyway, he said, never mind. So I went back to the kitchen and made another puri. Again, puri, you got to cook it properly, got to puff up nicely. These puris, chapatis don't puff up. They're not to be given to Prabhupada. So I made another puri, come in, I slide it onto his plate, offer obeisances, and he looks at me. He said, they're very good. So my potato chips, crisps, turned out to be very good. But the whole 2.5 years I was with him, he never asked for chips again. So many things I made in the evening. And every evening Prabhupada was eating, unlike what he was doing in the earlier days, 71 and 1970. One day in the evening, he would ring his bell and he would tell me, you never assume anything, what we were doing, what you were cooking. evening meal was whatever he would ask for. So one evening he rang the bell, I go in. He said, do you know how to make paratha? And I didn't. And I said, no, Prabhupada. He said, okay, I'll show you. He said, just prepare chapati dough. He said, when it's ready, call me. This was in New Dwarka, Los Angeles. So I made a chapati dough. Then I went and called Prabhupada. And I came in. So he said, okay. And we had, of course, ghee was always there in the kitchen. Always had nice golden fresh ghee. So he said, put some ghee down. He said, make like ball for chapati. He said, and press it down and roll with ghee. Put a little ghee on the top, a little ghee underneath, and roll out like a chapati. So I did that. He said, now put some ghee on. He said, then you fold it in half. And all of you who know how to cook, I'm sure many of you, most Matajis will know, maybe some of the men, know how to make a paratha, nice triangular shaped paratha. But ghee was the ingredient. So then he said, you put ghee, he said, then you fold it in half. He said, then, and he's just watching me. He's telling me what to do. He's telling me every step of the way. So then I rolled it to a semicircle. He said, now put some more ghee. He said, then you fold it over. So now it's in quarters. He said, and put the ghee on the top. And then you start to roll it out. It becomes like triangle shape. Now we had the cast iron little skillet, flat skillet. So put some ghee on there. So I put ghee on there. And medium heat. So put it down. Put it down on the skillet. You have your spatula. He said, then put some ghee on the top. So after it's there for half a minute or so, you turn it over. And then, slightly just little golden on the top. And then you put more ghee on that. So in this way, 2, 3, 4 times, kept doing, and it becomes because of all the ghee and roasting it becomes flaky, and it also started to puff up. So that night he had parathas and potatoes. Potatoes, he liked also same thing, ghee, nawak, little spice, and hot flame. Sometimes Prabhupada would tell people, flame hot, and we always had the tendency to turn it down, to not burn. But Prabhupada's method was hot, nice big flame, and you scrape, things become nice, and it become a little bit of crusty on the vegetables. So that was paratha and potatoes. So that was one. We have a few minutes left. I want to tell you one main preparation he showed me to cook. This was a Bhaktivedanta manner. He called me in the room before massage. I'm preparing everything before the massage. He said, so you get a liter of milk? He said, and turn it. He said, you make paneer. Press it out. He said, now you save the whey. Put the whey in the pot. He said, now the paneer, you make nice, press it nice. You cut it into cubes. And you deep fry it in ghee. These paneer cubes. For a long time. Becomes very brown on the outside. Dark golden brown. But fry it in the ghee. Not just a little bit, but a long time. And then you have the pot of whey on the side, and also on a very low flame, simmering. So then you put the paneer in there. Then you cut up the potatoes, like the cubes, just like the paneer. And you deep fry the potato. And then you throw that into the pot. Then peas, fresh peas. We didn't deep fry the peas. Peas you just put in the pot of whey. And then cauliflower, last thing you do is cauliflower because it's very delicate. You also chop that up and you deep fry the cauliflower. And so now in the pot, you have in the pot of whey, you have fried paneer, fried potato, fried cauliflower, and peas. So it's a soup. And then you make a chance and throw that in
to this pot as it's simmering on the stove. And because it's simmering on the stove, the paneer, although it's been fried very, very long time, and it would be very hard and crispy, it becomes softened and spongy and chewy. So I made that for him that day, along with everything else in the cooker, along with rice, chapatis, dal, a few sabjis. But that was the main, just call it Prabhupada soup. So I brought it in. He liked it. So every day for over a week before the massage, he would say, make that preparation. He ate it every day for 10 days in a row. He liked it so much. And of course, the essence of it was paneer and ghee. At different times, his and previous servants, one before me, he was very health food conscious person in those days. And we have them now, many in this kind, vegans, this, that, other things. Raw food diets. Prabhupada said raw food diet, very good, a yogi diet. So that day his servant made him nice big salad, raw salad, Western style salad, not like the leafy greens, tomato, little alfalfa sprouts like that. And he brought that to Prabhupada as one of the main courses for his lunch. And Prabhupada ate it. So then the next day, Prabhupada didn't say anything, but again, he made this nice raw salad. And for lunch, he brought it into Prabhupada. Prabhupada looked, he said, what is this? He said, I made the salad. Prabhupada said, I've been eating what I want my entire life. He said, I'm not going to stop now. And Prabhupada's entire life, I can tell you, when I was with him, he ate 3 meals a day. Nice meals. For breakfast, he always had whatever local fruits were available, just chopped up. He would drink juices sometimes when it was brought to him. And again, there was always a sweet on the plate. There wasn't anything else. Sandesh was there. When I first joined him, he said, you make proper sandesh, it can keep for a week outside of a refrigerator. So that was, fortunately, I learned that in how to make sandesh from Kirtananda. Lunchtime was always chapatis every day, rice chapatis. Oh, other people could make things. Sometimes he would kuras or samosas, but he don't even do that on occasion. He ate very simple. He said proper yogi type was simple, not a lot of spices, little bit of spices. This is there in Bhagavad Gita. You can read it in the purport. And not hot, not spicy hot, too hot to eat. These things also go on. You know, the Jagannath temple, no chili. What do they use? Salt, little black pepper, bas. So anyway, these things go on, and so many things go on. Our desire is to know what Prabhupada wanted, what he wanted us to do. By doing those things, everything's perfect. Then we're following Prabhupada closely. And this is, of course, what we want to do. This is the purpose. Reading Vilam Rita, having me talk, having so many disciples talk, not just to hear wonderful stories, it's to see how Prabhupada did things, because we want to become like him, not imitate him. That we can't do. We have to eat. He said, whatever you can digest, you eat. Not that you try to artificially eat less. No, it's a process, gradual process. So I see we're already at 9 o'clock. I hope I've given some useful information here and some Prabhupada nectar through this time. But I do want to spend the next half hour answering any questions anyone has. So if you're prepared to do that, Prabhu, you can come forward and let's start with that part of the class.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. Thank you so much. Prabhuji, before we go ahead, it seems that your audio settings have been changed. Last 5 minutes, the volume is very less. So is that something which you can do? I'm not sure. Yeah, it's not changed. It's the same way. I'm not sure if it is network issue, but
how about now? I just brought the the phone closer to me.
Hare Krishna.
Is that better?
Not actually, Prabhuji. We are very sorry for that, but
How about now?
well, Prabhuji, it seems like it's the same, right, devotees?
Okay.
The volume, we can hear you, but it's very, very weak and frail. The sound is very frail.
Maybe I'll get off and come back on. Let me try that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll
All right.
hold it. Yeah.
Okay.
So please bear with us. I think Prabhuji is going back to the laptop and we'll try if that works. So kindly bear with us till then. So in the meanwhile, if you want to put your questions on the chat box, it will help us to, because many devotees are there, it will help us to kind of present it to Prabhuji.
How are we now?
Yes, yes, Prabhuji. I think that's much better.
Okay, okay. Sometimes phone calls come in or something and then everything gets messed up, I think. So
Yes.
yeah. All right, very good.
Yes, thank you so much, Prabhuji. And your kitchen kathas have actually increased our appetite for more and more nectar coming from Srila Prabhupada. So thank you so much for sharing this, the mysteries of Srila Prabhupada's transcendental, kitchen sevas. So thank you so
Very
much.
good. You're welcome.
So devotees, it just reminds me, there's a statement I read in Srutakirti Prabhu's book. So when Srutakirti Prabhu was initiated by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, he said, "Your name is Srutakirti, one whose activities are world famous."
Yes.
So
yes.
now we know, why Srutakirti is world famous, because he so wonderfully spread Srila Prabhupada's mercy and causelessly distributes amongst ourselves. So thank you so much for your time, valuable time. So we have several questions. So maybe I'd like to moderate here because there are too many. We can go one by one. One of the question is, Prabhuji, we have heard that in Prabhupada's Leela, that how he inspired you to read Bhagavad Gita every day. Would you like to throw some light on that topic, please?
Well, that was one of the things, that was so amazing when I was with Prabhupada. And from the very beginning, seeing him reading his books and also having his disciples read to him from his books. And I said, Prabhupada was very regulated in his activities from the time he got up. As he said himself, I go to bed at 10:30. And that also, I would be giving him massage up to that point in the evening. So he said, I go to bed 10:30, I get up at 12:30. I do some translating work. He said, then I'll chant some rounds. He said, then if I have more time, I'll do some more translating. So in this way, he would go on till 5 o'clock in the morning. And then, of course, he would get ready for the morning walk. Morning walk was sun's going up, Prabhupada's on the morning walk. And then, of course, go back to the temple, class. He's always having breakfast. It's around 9 o'clock in the morning. So from 9 till noontime he could have different devotees in, temple managers, maybe even give darshan in his room like that. And then after lunch, he would have a short nap. So the afternoon time was Prabhupada's personal time. He would read, he could do bhajans, he could chant japa like that. And almost every day that I saw, he would be reading one of his books. So it was what happened, very specifically was, I was with him for a long time. So after some months, Prabhupada would just ring his bell. Now this is in the afternoon. And ring his bell meant the servant goes in. Nobody else goes in, the servant. So you're right next to him all the time. You're just outside the door. If you're lucky, you have a room outside the door where you can hear the bell. So the first day this happened, he rang the bell. I go in, I offer obeisances. And he's behind his desk. He's got his glasses on and he's reading Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada was in ecstasy reading his books. No one relished reading his books, his own books, as much as he did. So I'm sitting, I offer obeisances, I'm sitting right in front of him, and he looks at me and he said, "This book is so nice." He said, "If you just read this one book, you can be Krishna conscious." He said, "You don't have to read hundreds of books." He said, "Everything is in this book." He said, "Everything is there to become Krishna conscious." And again, he said, "You don't have to read so many books, just this one book." And then he put his head back down. And he was reading again, which means for me, now you can go. He didn't say all these things. You have to understand, when you were at Prabhupada, he taught you how to understand things without speaking. You just learned, or you should learn by being attentive. So I left the room. So many months go by. Now we're in a different place. And the bell rings. It's the afternoon again, 2, 3 in the afternoon. I offer obeisances, and he's reading Nectar of Devotion. And he's in ecstasy reading his books. And he looks at me and he said, "This book is so nice." He said, "If you just read this one book and understand, you can be Krishna conscious. Everything is there in this book." He said the exact same thing. He said, "You don't have to read hundreds of books." He said, "Just this one book, if you read it." This was his ecstasy was coming. He's reading it. And then after saying all that again, he put his head down and continued reading. So I offered obeisances and I left the room. So many more months go by. I think now we're in Juhu. He rings the bell in the afternoon, one afternoon. I go in and he's reading Krishna book. My very first service to Prabhupada was reading Krishna book to him in the garden in Los Angeles. I wasn't even his servant yet, but I was a designated reader in the garden. So now he's reading his Krishna book. I go in, I offer obeisances and up. What's he say? "This book," he said, "is so wonderful. This book is so sweet." He said, "Everything is here in this book. If you just read this one book, you can be Krishna conscious. You don't have to read hundreds of books." This is like 2 years later. He's saying the exact same thing to me. I'm sitting in front of him. He said, "You don't have to read so many books. Just this one book, if you read, you can be Krishna conscious." But he didn't put his head down. He just kept staring at me. And he said, "You don't even have to read the whole book." He said, "Just one chapter in this book." And he's pointing to this Krishna book. He said, "Just one chapter, if you read, you can become Krishna conscious." And he kept looking at me. He said, "You don't even have to read the whole chapter." He said, "This book is so nice." He said, "Just one page." And he ran his finger up and down the page. "If you read one page from this book, you can be Krishna conscious." And I'm sitting here, of course, I'm very even nervous, probably just, and he kept looking at me. He said, "You don't even have to read the whole page, just one line." He ran his finger across the line on that Krishna book, on that one page. He said, "Just one line from this book, if you read it, you can become Krishna conscious." And I'm just nodding, can't say anything. And they kept looking, staring at me. He said, "You don't even have to read the whole line, just one word." He poked his finger on a word in the Krishna book, in the page. He said, "Just one word. You open this book, read just one word, you can be Krishna conscious." He said, "Because Krishna is in every word." So Prabhupada gave us so many things, did so many wonderful things, opened temples, installed deities, made thousands of disciples. But these books he gave us, it's the essence of everything. He said to me once, he said, "The purpose of all these books is to bring you to the point of chanting Hare Krishna. But that's what we have to do. These books are very important to hear, to attend classes, to hear from people that have made progress in Krishna consciousness. Very, very important. But for ourselves to take these books, not just sell them, but to read ourselves, to read, because Krishna is in every word. As we know, we see now all the time on social media, everything's put up there every day. Prabhupada said, when I read, I'm amazed what I'm reading. He said, because it's not from me, it's from Krishna. It's all coming from Krishna. So whether it's Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada made no distinctions. Any book, he would call us into his room, sometimes in the afternoon if he knew we were sleeping. He would call us, everyone come in. We come in the room. He said to young brahmachari, get a book. The only books in Prabhupada's room were his books. And as the months went by, they increased, 5 books, 10 books, 20 books, like that. They increased every month. So he said to the young brahmachari, get a book. And of course, right away, Prabhupada, which book? Any book. So then, and I saw this again and again, and you get the book, and Prabhupada would say, read. And devotee, where from? Anywhere. Then he'd start reading. Prabhupada told me when there was days I was reading Krishna book to him, he said, Krishna is like a sweet ball. Everywhere you bite is sweet. So his books, he compared like that, like sweet ball. Anywhere, just get a book and start reading. And you can make progress in Krishna consciousness. You can become Krishna conscious by reading his books and understanding.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. It further goes to strengthen our faith that every book, every chapter, every line, every word is dictated none other than Lord Krishna to Srila Prabhupada, and it's given us to in legacy. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for sharing these wonderful
The Sankirtan devotees, sometimes they would ask Prabhupada, should we distribute this book or that book? Like 5th canto is very, very, should we? Prabhupada say, any book, just distribute books. He made no distinctions, just like he didn't make distinctions in our service. It's all absolute. You can be the pujari, you can be the person mopping the floor in front. It doesn't matter. It's absolute devotional service. So the books are like that, yes.
Even your narrations are like sweet ball, Prabhuji. From anywhere you pick in, we are just getting the nectar out. Thank you so much. So, Prabhuji, I'm getting a little selfish here. I had this one question ever since I had read your book. So, would you like to share or narrate your realizations and, of course, purport on that golden statement? What is the difficulty? So, we would like to hear from your lotus mouth.
Okay. Well, I joined because they moved in April 22nd is when I met the devotees and immediately went to the temple from that time on. So 3 months later, I was initiated. And that was in New York City in the Henry Street Temple. So it was, it was a house, converted house, 5-story house. And it had a big, big room. But as far as temple room, not so big. But when Prabhupada arrived in New York, of course, people came from all around the country. So there are hundreds of devotees. So that was the very first day that I got to see Srila Prabhupada. And I got to be right next to the Vyasasam because I was with Kirtanananda Swami. So I was just a little kid, from New Vrindavan, didn't know anything, just been chanting, serving for 3 months. But I was right next to the Vyasasam because of who I was with. That was his first sannyasi, one of the first disciples. So what happened was, of course, there's kirtans going on and everyone's jammed into the temple room. Like it's in Vrindavan every day now. It's like that, jammed in, everybody's jammed in. And people are hanging in the windows and looking through the doorways, and it's July. It's very hot, just like here. It's like hot and humid. It's like, 40 degrees and the humidity is way up there. So it's very, very hot in the temple room. Anyway, the kirtan stopped and Prabhupada starts the Premadvani prayers. So everyone has to get down. There's no standing with your hands folded. Prabhupada's there. Everyone gets down on the floor. So now it became very difficult because everyone standing takes a lot less room than everyone offering obeisances. But we all have to do it. So we all do it. But me, I'm very close to the Vyasasan, and it's also the first time I'm seeing Prabhupada. And I'm saying very quickly. And then I sat up to look at Prabhupada. But when I sat up, I was the only person getting up around me. So behind me, there's Brahmachari. He's still offering obeisances. So when I sat up, I accidentally sat on his head. And he pushed me. So when he pushed me, I went flying right across, right onto the Vyasasan, right on Prabhupada's feet on the Vyasasan. So they were Prabhupada's first words to me. He yelled, he said, "What is the difficulty?" And then, of course, I just shrank back into my spot. So that's why it became the name of the book, is because it's the very first thing Prabhupada said to me was, "What is the difficulty?" But it was a chastisement because I had fallen onto the Vyasasan. He uses that term. You'll see it if you type that into your Veda base. You'll see he says it so many times, but he says it in different ways. Sometimes he's what is the difficulty? We chant, we dance, we take prasadam. What is the difficulty? So it's a nice term. But with me, it was a little different. It was, what's your problem? What is the difficulty? So, yeah. And I never knew. Was writing those stories for years. And it was always called Srila Prabhupada Uvacha. But we never had, that was the working title. But then one morning I woke up and it was like a big billboard was in my head. It said, "What is the difficulty?" So, and that became the title of the book.
Jai. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, since we are in this nectarine close to heart and probably belly, the topic of prasadam, there's one question, and we are very curious as devotees. So once Srila Prabhupada finishes his prasadam, what remains is Maha. So how would you treat Maha prasadam? Could you share little light on those topics?
I generally distributed everything right from his plate. Lunchtime, we would all share. Tamal Krishna, he was very big on eating Prabhupada's remnants, from the cooker. He really liked what I cooked. One time he said to Prabhupada, "Srutakirti, he's expert cook." And Prabhupada laughed. He said, "Yes, he makes first-class American prasadam." So that meant it was very mild, But again, Prabhupada, it's what he ate every day. And I've had others tell me, I remember Hari Kesh saying, he said, and Prabhupada was at his healthiest the years I was with him, not because I was with him, but they were the years he literally would eat in the evening time, not just lunch. He had a good appetite, which means good appetite means good health. Good digestion means you're healthy. So he would ask for, I would make eggplant potatoes, puris, so many times, puris in the evening. Sometimes he would take the puffed rice. But distributing the remnants, I remember once here in Vrindavan, Krishna Balaram Mandir, 1975, when the opening was there. And so I would, when Prabhupada was done, and there was always something on his plate. Sometimes, half was still on his plate. And one of the temple presidents, he offered me $100. He said, for the plate of prasadam. And the fact that he did that got me so upset, I just moved on, and I don't even know if I gave him any of the remnants. But later on, even I remember Shruti Rupa telling stories in Mayapur. The devotees became a little picky. They would want this or want that. And she told Prabhupada, and Prabhupada told her, everything, mix it together, turn it into one thing and distribute it that way. He said no one should make distinction when it came to the Mahaprasadam. But in the West, you never had to do that. We were always very eager The very first remnant I ate, and this was before I was a servant, when I went to get Brahmin initiation in May 1972. So that was like 4 months prior. Nanda Kumar was his servant, and so I took an orange peel. Prabhupada ate everything from it, and all that was left was the peel, and I ate the orange peel. But many of us, one of our first prasadams was orange peel. So we saw everything was relishable. And believe me, orange peel is not tasty. It's quite bitter. But it was maha prasadam. And, I think there are different things. Well, to this day, 50 years later, I'm still around. And one of them is I ate a lot of maha prasadam somehow or other. So I despite everything, despite all my faults, rascaldom, I'm still around because I ate lots and lots of maha prasadam. And I offered obeisances to Prabhupada thousands of times while he was there. And he never told me that was enough. During lunch, I could offer obeisances a dozen times, just going back and forth, bringing him chapatis and bringing him seconds. He never said, okay, that's all. You did it enough. No, it's always for your benefit. That's another important thing to understand and to put into practice for all of us. Whenever you go into the temple room, whenever you leave the temple room, whenever possibility, you offer your obeisances. And you get that much closer. Yeah.
Amazing, Prabhuji. So we hope that this Maha Prasadam of your Nectar and Srila Prabhupada Katha will keep us also alive. And
yes, it's important. Prabhupada was a person. He was pure, but still he was a person. Once devotee said, Prabhupada, it's very difficult, because Prabhupada would talk about controlling our senses, controlling our eating. Devotee said, Prabhupada, it's very difficult to control my tongue. Prabhupada said, I have a tongue. In other words, I also have to control my tongue, and that's what we see. Now I'm 71. I have to eat very carefully to maintain health. And that's, very important.
Thank you so much. So with 6 minutes left, maybe I would like to have a couple of more devotees. May I request Medhavani Sati Mataji to kindly present your question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, thank you so much for the wonderful lecture. I was reminded of the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, right? Drinking water is, reminds us of Krishna. Now, whenever we cook in the cooker or make puris, or, even when we make our plate, you made it so relishable that we always think of Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Prabhu. And I'll definitely try the Prabhupada soup for sure. I will know the recipe. Thank you, Prabhu.
Prabhupada liked the fried paneer very much. It's got to be cooked in ghee. Ghee for us, Prabhupada, ghee was the key to attract everyone. Nice ghee.
Thank you, Prabhu. Definitely will try.
Thank you.
Prabhu, my question. Can I ask my question, Prabhu?
Quickly.
Okay, sure. So, Prabhuji, I've been asking everyone this, and I've got different answers. So, I want to understand from you. If I were to ask you a minimum of 3, it can go on, according to how much ever you want to share. 3 qualities of Srila Prabhupada that made you surrender your life to Srila Prabhupada and dedicate your life to Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON. What would those 3 qualities be? And can you share some interactions with Prabhupada where you felt these qualities and you surrendered your life?
In 5 minutes. Qualities, I say different things, but most important quality was his loyalty to us. Prabhupada was always there for us no matter what we do, other than change the philosophy. Change the philosophy, he'd reject you. But as far as all our faults, even breaking principles, not chanting, he was always there for us, remain loyal, and never leave us. And to me, that's the most important thing. But we can leave, and so many have left, Prabhupada this way, that way, more important guru, or just fallen down. But he's always there. He's always there to pick us back up. So that's the quality of pure devotee. The other thing that I really liked, and I saw it in my very first days with him in Los Angeles, was his sense of humor. The Prabhupada could laugh and laugh and laugh like nobody I ever saw laugh. He'd laugh, his whole body would shake, everything, and tears would come. His emotions, his quality of laughing was like nothing I had ever seen. And that's when I realized that Krishna consciousness was fun. It's not about austerity, hardships, difficulty. No, it's all about pleasure with Krishna. And Prabhupada showed that. The third quality, he was with me, and I saw with, again, everything with me is very personal because I was with him. How his humility, how he always just, everyone saw the Acharya, but I got to see when he walked into his room, he wasn't an Acharya, he was just very humble, simple, childlike devotee. So that also touched me very much to see all these things. They were just his duty. He was performing his duty to his spiritual master. But aside from all that, he was simple devotee of Krishna and lover of Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Dandavat pranam, koti dandavat pranam, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Do one more question. We got one more question.
Yes, I think Deepamala Mataji is ready with the question. We have 2 minutes, Mataji, so accordingly you can present your question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
My humble obeisances to you. Thank you for this beautiful session. My question was that how can we differentiate between bare necessities and an opulent life? Like you mentioned about the AC, how it has become essential because of the temperature. So how sometimes like we start giving us excuses about the necessities. We think it is necessary, but actually it is opulent. So how can we do that, differentiate?
You explained it yourself. We need to be honest with ourselves, what it means to have bare necessities. Prabhupada, all he wanted his disciples to manage on the bare necessities. In those days when he was here, we all lived in the temple. There was no congregation. It was all temple. And he provided for us. He wanted everyone to eat in the temple. Of course, depending on how it's prepared in the temple, that can be difficult at times too. But in those days, we had no option. When Prabhupada said prasadam should be so tasty, he called it sumptuous. He said two kinds, opulent and sumptuous. Opulent was ghee and sugar, and the deities eat opulently. He said, but the devotee should eat sumptuous. He said sumptuous means very tasty. He said prasadam should be so tasty that a devotee doesn't even think of eating outside of the temple. Now, of course, again, this was temple days. So that's bare necessities. He didn't like the idea of not going to the temple because you have your deities at home. He said you worship the deities in the temple. Everything was focused in the temple. This is how we were trained and raised. If it's possible where you are, that's what you should do. Otherwise, we know the process. We make our home a temple, and we can offer the deities so many wonderful things. But for ourselves, devotees, simple. Once we were staying, and this was one of the first times when I traveled to India with Prabhupada, it was very austere. We were austere by choice in the West, but in India, it was just austere. There was no facility, no good place to stay, no good things to eat, no easy way to wash your clothes or bathe yourself or even to be healthy. And all of a sudden, Prabhupada did this program in Mumbai, and we stayed at this, it was a Bollywood director, producer. We stayed at this very opulent palatial place, all marble. We all had our own rooms. And Prabhupada rang his bell. So I had to come from the room where I was staying in. I had my own bathroom, everything. I went into the room and Prabhupada looked at me, he smiled. He said, do you like it here? And of course, he knew I did because I was had nice facility. And I said, oh yes, Prabhupada, very much. And Prabhupada looked at me, he said, yes. He said, if Krishna gives us a bed, we sleep in the bed. But if he doesn't give us a bed, then we sleep on the floor. So that's one understanding of also bare necessities. What Krishna provides, we accept it happily. But then if he's not providing, we also accept that very happily. Again, we're not artificial. We need our sleep. Me at this age, like I can't lie on the floor and sleep. I need a little cushion under my body. So we accept what we need, but we don't spend our time trying to get more and more and more. You know, what comes easily, devotees should be happy with. But these are all these are described, you know, very nicely by Prabhupada in his books. What comes, we accept. But then what doesn't come, we also accept. That's devotee. He just wants to serve Krishna. He's not looking for anything other than service. And in that way, if we live like that, then we can make nice advancement in Krishna consciousness. Not trying to make things nicer. This person has bigger office than me. This one has this one. No, you can get that here. This is for Mataji here. Okay.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for sharing these wonderful realizations.
Thank you.
Keep reading in Chaitanya Charitamrita. When we read descriptions of Lord Chaitanya and his affectionate dealings with his personal servant Govinda, you know, when we get to witness, when we get to witness such realizations from your side, you know, we get little idea how that would be. So thank you so much, Prabhuji, for your valuable time. And as we know, true to his name, Srutakirti Prabhu, you know, across the universe, he continues to spreading Srila Prabhupada's mercy, his nectar and pastimes, and more information you can get in his book, the wonderful book, What is the Difficulty? You know, the Srila Prabhupada Watch. So once again, on behalf of entire Evolve community and all the wonderful devotees, we wish we could have continued, but somewhere, you know, the time is ticking on.
Yes.
And, you know, so we would like to take a stop here. And once again, we express our heartfelt gratitude at your lotus feet for giving us mercy of Srila Prabhupada so effortlessly. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you for arranging, and we'll see you all again, okay?
Yes, His Grace Srutakirti Prabhu ki jai. His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki
jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mataji.
So before we log out, a gentle reminder to all, we are going to continue this, you know, wonderful journey of having association of most illustrious disciples of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. So we have for next session, we have 2 weeks break, which means the next session will be on 6th of August. And one more very, very senior disciple, the most illustrious, Her Grace Malati Mataji is going to grace this wonderful event. And we are all eager to hear from her. So we would also request all the participants and devotees to make use of best time. These 2 weeks, you can spend little more time on reading Leelamrut, hearing, revising your sessions, and be ready to, get to the quiz, which Medhavini Saki Mataji and an entire team has, wonderfully made. So with that reminder, we would like to take your, permission to take leave at this point of time. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. His Divine Grace, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Dandavat pranams.